the past 5 years. The town of Wernigerode owns 2,000 hectares of forest, and half of that has died. They're planting new trees, different species to make up mixed forests, which they hope will be more resilient.
You can think 1 hectare, I think, costs 10,000 euro. The city of Wernigerode must replant 1,000 hectare.
So where's the money going to come from?
In the next years. The money comes from the state, yes.
From the government?
Also, yes, also from the Bundesrepublik, especially also from companies, yes, sorry. And a lot of people gave money to buy a tree and plant it.
The mountains and forests are key to the tourism industry in Wernigerode. Christiana Oldendorf is the town guide. Dressed in a bright pink coat and carrying a large umbrella, she gives me a tour. We start at the fountain in front of the town hall. Just tell me about this square. There are beautiful timber frame buildings. How old is it?
It's the historic market square of Wernigerode. It always was, since the 12th century, but we had a lot of city fires, and that means we always had to rebuild many buildings. So here we have the town hall from the middle of the 15th century. But we also have...
No one can deny, though, that however stunning the historic town of Wernigerode may be, just up the nearby mountains, there's devastation.
People who have a hotel or something, of course they are afraid people wouldn't come anymore. And they don't want to lose their businesses, and they are afraid that Wernigerode won't be an attractive tourist destination anymore.
Christiana, like Andreas, is determined to emphasize what's being done and to focus on the future.
Sometimes it makes me sad when maybe an old man is coming and now he wanted to see the Harz Mountains maybe for the last time, and then he is disappointed because there's no more woods as he knew them. You know, you try to explain and to describe maybe a future idea, and sometimes it helps.
And the future idea is that there will be mixed forest.
Mixed forest, right. Mixed forest, a lot of beeches, because that's what's native here. The spruces need another altitude. It's not the right spot where they try to grow them, so that's why it doesn't work out.
There's deep public concern and debate about the health of Germany's forests, and it's being played out all over the country. You don't just find forests in Germany's countryside and up in the mountains. I'm now in central Berlin, and I'm just getting on the train to Grunewald, Greenwood, on the outskirts of the city. I'm actually on my way to meet Dr. Nicole Wellbrock of the Thunen Institute for Forest Ecosystems. She's responsible for compiling data on the condition of Germany's trees for an annual report published by the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. There are some walkers coming past us with their sticks. Just had a cyclist, and there's a horse at the end of this track. So this really is a forest for everyone.
Yes, it is. Really, I like it because you meet every kind of people. All people from Berlin come here, meet here, and do what they want. Nordic walking.
Yes, they've got a stick in each hand, walking along quite purposefully. How would you describe this forest? What sort of a forest is it?
It's a mixed forest. We have oak trees, we have pine, we have some beech, acer.
And what sort of condition would you say this forest is in at the moment?
Not really bad, but not good.
In the Berlin area, they've had an unusually wet winter, but Nicole, who has short blonde hair and is wearing a navy anorak and has a rucksack on her back, says because of recent drought years, there's still a shortage of stored water below ground, and another warm, dry summer would be problematic for the trees. This forest looks nothing like the dead spruce I saw in the Harz Mountains. Here, the trees are in leaf, but from mid-June to mid-August, the health of Germany's trees will be assessed nationwide, from loss of foliage at the wrong time of year to having died altogether. A lack of leaves means the tree is less able to create the nutrients it needs for growth.
Look at the crown, the upper crown. We have a tree with a lot of lost needles, and you can really look through the tree and see the sky. And the crown is not very dense.
And that
And it's
is
not
a si-
green, really green.
So that is a sign of a sick tree.
Yes, yes, it is.
What did you find in your latest report?
4 out of 5 trees are in bad condition, but that means that 44% are in condition like warning. Warning means that you see some damage, but it can change to good or to bad. But 35% are really serious defoliation, and they're really in a bad condition. Only 20% are in good condition.
So which trees are worst affected by drought?
The spruce is really dying, especially in the lowlands. It's large areas are dying. There are some areas where also beech are dying, but it's suffering. Also oak is suffering. There's no really tree species which we can say it's well growing.
The problems for Germany's forests started back in the 1980s, when acid rain, contaminated with pollution from cars and factories, caused trees to die. It also prompted a huge environmental awareness in Germany. Conditions improved with regulation, but Nicole says some pollutants still remain in the soil, and now there's the problem of drought.
First we have in the 80s this acid rain. In 2017 we have large storms. Then we had a lot of dead trees lying down. The bark beetle really like these dead trees. Then we have drought. Normally the spruce produce resin to enclose the bark beetles, but if it's too dry, they are not able to do so. So the bark beetles can easily attack the trees.
So are we talking about climate change here?
Yes, of course. The number of drought years is increasing. Over the last decades, we are seeing that. It's a serious problem. Even if we have one rainy year, it will not help.
I've travelled west, and I'm now south of Bonn, on the road to the Eiffel Forest. And all around me are different types of trees. I'm beginning to recognise a few different species. Thank you. I've arrived in the village of Vershofen, home to the Forest Academy, run by the forester and best-selling writer of books about trees, Peter Wohlleben. Extremely tall with a greying beard and glasses, he's become a bit of a celebrity in the world of trees, although he's also a polarizing figure in the debate about Germany's forests.
Yeah, in reality, I'm an environmentalist. Tree shepherd, yeah, something like this.
And how many books have you written altogether?
In the moment, I am writing on my 30th book.
30th?
30th, yeah.
And The Hidden Life of Trees was the bestseller.
It was the bestseller, but the publisher here in Germany first printed just 3,000 copies because that was what they expected could be sold.
And how many were sold?
I think in Germany alone 1.3 million so far.
We're walking out of the village to a forest owned by the local community and managed by Peter Wohlleben Academy, which runs courses for the general public about trees. The way he writes and talks about trees, though, is rather unusual.
We are working through families, for example, here you're walking through a little tree kindergarten. This one here?
A tree kindergarten?
A tree kindergarten, yeah. Mother tree is an old technical term in German forestry. In science, we know that mother trees, for example, can detect through their roots what the neighboring tree is about. Is it an oak? Okay, that's not my family. Is it a different beech, which is not my family? Or are, for example, the seedlings are my own?
And when you write about this, it does sound as if the trees are people, they're a family. Do you do that because that's what you really believe, or that's what you want the general public to think? You want them to think about the forests as communities almost like them?
Yeah, no, that's reality. The only difference between science and what I'm writing is I make it more popular in a more easy language.
Peter Wohlleben is very vocal in the current debate about what should be done to protect Germany's forests. He blames the dying trees on commercialised forestry and the timber industry, and advocates a return to natural forests which are allowed to reseed themselves. He's against managed replanting programs. Your latest book, The Power of Trees, is very, very critical of forestry and the way forests have been managed up until now. Do you want to end the timber industry in Germany?
No, I don't want to end the timber industry, but I want to end the forest business as it is made today. Because we are losing every year 1,500 square kilometers. And why? Because of planting non-native trees, of making plantations. It's like battery farming. For example, when you drive with big machines in the forest, you destroy the ability to store water down to 5%, round about that. That means that in hot, dry summer, the trees haven't any spare water in the forest floor. And then even beech trees die, and then those foresters say, look at the beech trees, even native trees die. That's not our fault, that's climate change.
Well, surely they've got to replant these forests.
No, that's the biggest mistake ever. You can't plant a forest, you can just make a plantation. If you plant trees, whatsoever trees, you can't plant their ecosystem, the bacteria species, the fungi species.
So your answer is?
My answer is let do nature the job. Trees are able to repair forest ecosystems since 300 million years. And we see it when you look at these older damaged areas. The natural forests come back first with birch, with aspen, with willow, and then other species like beech and oak and ash and so on. But forest industry don't like it. They want to have conifers in between, so they cut them down, replace them, and so on. So, but if you look at those older forest stands, you see it is possible that nature repairs it itself. And those trees are much more resilient to climate change.
I mean, do you not want them to use wood at all for building?
Of course, but less. Because if you thin a forest too heavily, it will die.
People in Germany really do care about the forest. It covers 1/3 of the country, and even though half is privately owned, everyone has the right to walk there. It's long played a role in German culture. It's the setting for the fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm, and for poems by Goethe and many others who followed him. But however romantic the idea of Germany's forest might be, it's also a commercial source of timber, and last year around 100 million trees were felled.
It's the best conference room here.
Oh, lovely. Fantastic view. I've come to meet Christian Meyer, Deputy Manager of the Timber Division of RWZ, an agricultural products group, and we're looking out at Cologne Cathedral. Christian Meyer believes it's important for the industry that the proportion of softwood trees, which includes spruce, many of which are being replaced with other species, doesn't fall below 50%.
Ja, die Lösungen sind natürlich klar. Erstmal die Lösungen.
The solutions are of course clear. First of all, to restock the devastated forests. That means reforestation with mixed forests and a high proportion of coniferous trees, which in our view is the answer. To produce wood for the next generation that can be used relatively quickly and can supply the timber industry.
But what do you say to the people like Peter Wohlleben who say, no, we shouldn't do that. There shouldn't be a timber industry as it is today. It should be much smaller.
Dann muss allerdings dann ein Herr Wohlleben mir dann auch mal erklären, wo das...
Mr. Wohlleben has to explain where he thinks the timber and wood products will come from, if not from German production. And I don't know where the tables, the roof trusses, pallets, where all this wood is supposed to be produced. I think it would be a shame if sites are taken out of production in Germany and the forest is just left to its own devices. But it's really a socio-political question which I can't answer.
So you're saying it's a question for society, but society seems quite split about this.
Ja, ich habe ein bisschen Sorge.
Yes, I'm a bit worried about political opinions on this. In my view, there's a very strong conflict in Germany between the urban population and the rural population, and many discussions over climate are driven from the urban point of view. Personally, I don't see a problem in combining nature conservation with the production of timber.
That's also the view of the SDW, the German Forest Protection Association. Jonas Brandl is Forest Policy Advisor there. Are you on the side of the nature conservationists who'd like to keep the forest as it is, or are you on the side of forestry who would still like to see managed and cultivated forests?
I would say we sit directly in the middle of the debate. So most of the forests we like to see being managed, but in a very sustainable way. The thing with climate change is, first of all, it's human-made, so it's going on very fast, and the trees haven't learned in their evolution to adapt that fast. So through planting, you can bring in another tree species that will diversify your forest and will make it stronger to get on with climate change and to adapt to it.
The German government is giving forest owners 900 million euros for replanting and also for setting aside a portion of their cultivated forest. But what does Jonas Brandl think about the accusation that forestry is itself to blame for the current situation?
We need to go back to the time after the Second World War, and we need a timber to build. That was the reason why so many spruce was planted. And then you can't just go on and say we blame everyone. Right now we see it's not something made for climate change, but no one knew about it. But definitely we need to say that we need to manage our forests in a more diverse way.
Let's return now to Wernigerode, where this program started. One of the attractions is the narrow gauge steam railway, which takes visitors up into the mountains. A final question for Andreas Mehling, who's head of the tourist office there. You can't exactly advertise your dead forests, can you? You can't say, come to Wernigerode, come to the Harz Mountains to see the dead spruce trees.
Perhaps I have to do that because we will see these dead trees the next years. 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. I have to explain it. And perhaps it's a very special attraction, yes. You can see climate change. And you can do something against climate change. So come to the Harz Mountain and have a look to that, and perhaps you can learn something for yourselves, and you can do at home something better.
One thing is certain. Whoever's right in this debate about whether to manage and replant or leave the forest to recover by itself, the emergence of new forests in Germany will take generations. Assignment was presented and produced by me, Caroline Bailey.
Our series, The Climate Question, aims to understand climate change and the world's attempts to avert it, temper it, or adapt to it. From asking if we've put too much faith in trees to finding out if lab-grown meat is better for the planet.
I would ask consumers and other researchers to just dig a little bit into the data.
Hear more at bbcworldservice.com/The Climate Question or search The Climate Question wherever you get your BBC podcast.
In 50 minutes, witness history.
Today we're going back 10 years to May 2013 and we'll be hearing about what it was like to be a storm chaser on the trail of the widest tornado ever recorded.
Stay with us. Outlook is next. This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
I'm India Rakison. Next on the BBC World Service, it's Outlook, where our guest today takes us to Vietnam and the belly of the world's largest cave.
They usually say that several blocks of New York City can fit inside this cave. The cave is so big, it has its own ecosystem. There were clouds flying in and out, and it was raining inside the cave. And one of the scientists said, watch out for dinosaurs, because they feel like they can see a dinosaur walking through the cave. That's how big the cave is, and that's how untouched the cave is.
Hung Le was one of the first Vietnamese people to visit the spectacular and beautiful San Don Cave. So when she heard of plans that could destroy it, she knew she had to act. But it wasn't going to be easy.
It is risky to protest in Vietnam because you risk being arrested for sure.
a teacher, and her battle to save the world's biggest cave. That's after the news.
Hello, I'm David Harper with the BBC News. The Republican governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, has declared he's seeking the Republican nomination for next year's US presidential elections. Mr. DeSantis is widely seen as the biggest challenger to the former President Donald Trump, who remains the clear front-runner in the race. David Willis reports.
After overcoming a series of glitches on the Twitter Spaces audio feed, Ron DeSantis told an audience of millions that it was time to restore sanity to the United States by imposing tougher immigration policies and clamping down on crime. In what will be seen as a dig at his one-time mentor and now arch-rival Donald Trump, the Florida governor also said that it was time to end the Republican Party's culture of losing. President Biden, who recently announced that he intends to run for a second term at the White House, tweeted a link to a fundraising page and, referencing the problems with the Twitter feed, wrote, "This link works."
The US National Security Agency says that it has identified a state-sponsored cyber actor from China trying to target critical infrastructure networks across the United States. It comes after Microsoft published details of a mysterious computer code it had first detected months earlier, appearing in telecommunication systems in Guam and elsewhere in the US. Leaders of the Roman Catholic Church in Bolivia have announced steps to investigate hundreds of reports of sexual abuse of children in church-run schools that have shocked the country in recent weeks. The bishops said they were setting up 2 commissions to look into the allegations of abuse, many dating back to the 1970s and 80s. They admitted the church had been deaf to the issue and called on witnesses to come forward. Pamela Terrazas is an MP. She says those responsible must be held to account.
In the complaints we have received, the Catholic Church, the Adventist Church, and the Evangelical Christian churches have been singled out. Practically all churches are involved. As institutions, they have to face the consequences.
The scandal emerged in April when a Spanish newspaper published the diary of a late Jesuit priest containing multiple confessions of sexual abuse in schools he ran in Bolivia. Since then, 200 people have come forward to say they suffered abuse. 6 civilians in Pakistan have been sent for trial in a military court for their alleged involvement in recent violent protests. Many supporters of Imran Khan took to the streets after he was arrested 2 weeks ago. Caroline Davis reports.
The military in Pakistan have made it increasingly clear that they intend to harshly punish those involved in the protests that followed Imran Khan's arrest earlier this month. The BBC has seen a court order from the anti-terror court handing a civilian over to the Pakistan army for trial. He's one of 6. The UN Human Rights Chief called the use of military courts to try civilians disturbing.
World News from the BBC. Saudi Arabia and Canada have announced they'll restore full diplomatic relations following a 5-year rift. The decision follows talks late last night between Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. In 2018, the Saudi government expelled Canada's ambassador and recalled its own envoy to Ottawa over Canadian calls for the release of activists jailed in the kingdom. A Tunisian court has ordered the release of the head of the country's most popular radio station. Noureddine Boutar, director of Mosaic FM, is among more than 20 prominent opposition figures detained since early this year in what Amnesty International has called a politically motivated witch hunt. Officials in Ecuador have announced that early elections will be held on the 20th of August. President Guillermo Lasso dissolved the country's National Assembly last week. Mr. Lasso said the elections for both the presidency and the legislature would be an opportunity to unite the country. Tributes have been paid to the American soul and pop superstar Tina Turner, who's died aged 83. Known as the Queen of Rock and Roll, she rose to fame in the 1960s. The White House described her as a music icon. Here's our arts editor, Katie Razzle.
Gospel, soul, R&B, rock and roll and pop. Tina Turner had so many hit records across eras and genres and seemed to feel the music like a spirit inside her when she danced. She was also a role model for survivors of domestic abuse after opening up about the violence she suffered at the hands of her first husband. Tina Turner claimed she taught Mick Jagger to dance. The lead singer of the Rolling Stones said he was so saddened by the death of a woman he called his wonderful friend. Gloria Gaynor said Tina Turner paved the way for so many women in rock music, black and white. We have seen the passing of a legend, a woman whose voice has been the soundtrack to our lives for so long.
Katie Razzle on the life of Tina Turner. And that's the latest BBC News.
Hello, you're with the BBC World Service, and this is Outlook with me, India Rakison, where we introduce you to extraordinary people around the globe. And what I love about both of today's stories is that they're great examples of how life can take really unexpected turns when something beautiful and captivating gets under your skin. So, here's our first guest.
So my name is Lê Nguyễn Thiên Hương. You can call me Hương for short.
Hương grew up in Vietnam and always had big ambitions to head off exploring.
Back in the days when I was a child, my favorite hobbies was to read. And one of the series that I really loved was by Jules Verne. All of these books about like 80 Days Around the World, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and Journey to the Center of the Earth. So reading those books gave me a sense of what the world outside of my bedroom could look like. And that was when I knew that I want to explore the world.